Well, the Treasurer and I agree on one thing. Australia's 24 years of uninterrupted economic growth should be celebrated, and even more importantly, it should be protected. It's a remarkable achievement, the longest period of uninterrupted economic growth for any developed country in the history of the world. Many people are responsible for it, but it's our responsibility to ensure it continues. We agree on the end, continuing those 24 years of uninterrupted economic growth. Economic growth lifts people out of poverty and turns aspiration into reality. But we disagree, Madam Speaker, on the method. The Treasurer says the way to protect our economic growth record, our living standards, is to embrace his budget, which, to our way of thinking, is a fundamentally unfair document. He effectively says that the way to protect Australia's living standards is to attack Australia's living standards through the budget. The Treasurer's approach and the government's approach is that unfairness and regressive policies are the basis for reform, and that reform must be unfair. We embrace economic reform. We do not run from it. We embrace it. We acknowledge that it is necessary to ensure ongoing growth, but we reject completely and utterly economic reform based on unfairness. At the core is the Treasurer's philosophy, which underpins his budget, which he shared with the House and with the people on Budget 9, dividing Australia into lifters and leaners. This is where we differ. The way to make the case for reform is not to divide Australia down the middle. The way to make the case for reform is not to say some Australians deserve to benefit from economic growth and others do not. This is what he was doing when he announced that the government would attempt to introduce unfair indexation for Australia's aged pensioners. This is what he was doing when he announced that he would take away family tax benefit for children over 6. This is what he was doing when he announced that the government believed it was necessary to create an underclass by taking people under 30 off Newstart allowance. And this is what they were doing when they announced that low-income earners would receive zero tax support for saving for their future through superannuation. These are at the core of the government's philosophy and the government's approach. Now, Madam Speaker, the Treasurer talked of economic growth. As I said in my opening remarks, we on this side of the House do not run from economic growth. We embrace it. We are the party of economic growth. Economic growth lifts people from poverty into prosperity. That is what drives the Labor Party, Madam Speaker. We will embrace things which promote economic growth, and we will criticise things which take away from economic growth. And we say creating an Australia which is more fundamentally unfair does not promote growth, it diminishes growth. It will in the long run be seen as a threat to growth, and the government should recognise the same. And I want to talk to Madam Speaker about the impact in the shorter term of economic growth, of this government's economic policies and the budget in particular. Now, the Treasurer again talked about confidence in his ministerial statement, and it is something we should talk about. We should talk about confidence, because confidence has been smashed by this budget. Confidence fell by 7 percentage points in the month following the budget. Consumer confidence. It is 13% lower than it was at the time of the last election. We were promised an adrenaline charge, and this is about the budget. It's about the Treasurer's rhetoric, which is ill-judged and irresponsible. The Treasurer's rhetoric in the lead-up to the budget was talking up a budget crisis. And the Australian people listened. The Australian people listened, as they do when a Treasurer speaks, and they put away their wallets, and Australian businesses have paid the price for the Treasurer's ill-judged rhetoric. And Australian families have paid the price for the Treasurer's ill-judged rhetoric and his actions in the lead-up to the budget and since. And the Australian people and Australian consumers have also responded to the mixed messages from the government. The lack of an economic strategy, the lack of an economic narrative. One day we're told it's fine. The budget's been 75% passed. What are you worried about? Everything's dandy. The next day we've got a crisis on our hands because of that terrible Labor Party standing up for what they believe in, standing up for fairness. How dare they? They're blocking our budget. Well, can Australian consumers be forgiven for being confused? Madam Speaker, as we end this parliamentary year, let there be no doubt, the Labor Party will always be the party of economic growth. We believe in it, we'll promote it, and in government we'll deliver it. And we'll deliver it for the best interests of all Australians. We won't choose lifters and leaners. We will say every Australian should benefit from economic growth, and every Australian should be encouraged to contribute to that economic growth to the best of their ability and capacity. That'll be the approach of a Shorten Labor government. That'll be the contest of ideas undertaken in this chamber next year. That'll be the contest of ideas undertaken across the nation. It's a contest of ideas we intend to participate in and win.